because that's what makes you realize like how much like I care, like how much I care about you as a person, right?
Yeah.
Sorry. I didn't expect to talk about this, to be honest. Nick Scarpinato, that specific Nick.
Very same.
It's been almost a year now. I know we had talked about at your show. By the way, your show was great.
No,
you did a really great job. I talked to Anthony about this. Mm-hmm. If the weather wasn't so like humid that day that you were playing outdoor, you would have easily had the people that were inside outside. People still they still heard you from the inside.
Oh, really?
And came out because they heard you playing while they were inside.
I didn't know that.
And so that's what kind of piqued their curiosity. I don't know if you noticed towards the end, you had like more people starting to show up, and that's just because they heard you from inside, and then kind of it piqued their interest, and they came out. Damn. So if you would have, if it would have been like nicer, easily you could have had that patio filled.
Well, thanks.
You did a great job.
I appreciate it.
And so it's been a year almost. What have you been up to?
Oh my God. What a loaded question. I wasn't expecting that. Seconds ago. Yeah. Seconds ago, Josh was like, hey, so we're going to talk about this. And so in the last year, I mean, a couple of things of note have happened. I moved out of my apartment in Aurora. I was living in Aurora, Illinois, for a while, and I only say it like that so that if anyone has any thoughts of stalking me, you can't do it anymore because I don't live in Aurora anymore, bitch.
Caught that one out.
Yeah, so cut that one out. No,
no, I'm just kidding.
Okay. Yeah, I moved out of my apartment. I was living with 2 roommates for 3.5 years, just about. And I moved back in with my parents, which is a pretty cool move that I feel like knee-jerk reaction. Obviously, it sort of hurts your ego a little bit to admit that you aren't financially in a spot where you're financially able to keep yourself afloat without the help of other people. And at the time, it was my roommates contributing to the rent and the bills. And our lease was up, and we had all sort of changed jobs since we first moved into that apartment. Mm-hmm. And we realized rent's only going to keep getting higher, and bills are only going to keep piling up, and our jobs we were all doing sort of more creative focused work, and I was pivoted almost entirely to playing music for full time, which I'm doing now and I love, and it's the best job in the world. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise, unless they don't like playing music. Right. In that case,
let them tell you.
Yeah, let them tell you. And my other 2 roommates, one's a dance instructor and does choreography for productions all over the west suburbs, and the other teaches code and also dabbles in other gig work as an artist, as a dancer and musician. And so we were all sort of in that field. And a year prior, when we signed the lease, we had told ourselves, all right, we'll give ourselves another year and we'll see if anything changes. And nothing really changed. And it was that last year, especially, that was really enlightening. So I moved in with my parents. Obviously, at first, it's kind of a bummer because you have to move all your shit back into a spot that has been living on without you for a long time. And so what used to be my room was turned into a room with an entirely different purpose. And my mom had filled it up with a bunch of stuff. And I was bringing everything that I had before I moved out, and then all the 3.5 years of like comics and figures that I'd bought, among other things. I bought food too, not just nerd things. And so that was rough, but we adjusted, and just as I finally adjusted to living with my parents again and having an extra roommate, and then also all of the animals and everything, my grandpa passed away, which was not chill, was not cool. It was the day after Christmas, so everyone, the entire Christmas break was a little on edge because he was in the hospital and he was undergoing a lot of family visits and whatnot. And so we did all that. We did the wake and the funeral and the burial and the everything. And then we tried to grieve the loss of Grandpa. And then maybe 2 months later, we lost our dog of 14 years. So no more Riley, no more little loaf of bread. And that was hard. And it was really hard on my mom specifically. And it took a long time. Obviously, it's been several months since February. But yeah, or maybe not February. It might have been a little bit later. But it all kind of smushes together, you know,
right.
when you deal with
definitely very close together.
Yeah, and I feel like it doesn't. It sort of feels like it's clumped closer together. That, and also because we had leftover, not trauma, but
grief.
Yeah, leftover grief that kind of went unchecked for a while because we all had lives to get back to and jobs and aspects of our lives that required our focus, even when our brains and our hearts were still telling us, no, you gotta figure this shit out still. What do you do? Where are you going?
Yeah.
And so I think in my brain so far, I've just put the first half of 2024 into this little mason jar that I buried in the backyard. And I only think about it as clumped together because since then I feel great. I've been playing a lot of shows as a musician. A lot of businesses will only have music on the patio throughout the year. So now that the weather is nicer, I'm booking a lot more gigs and I'm getting to meet more people who have access to people who book gigs. And I'm super, super lucky to be in the community that I am and to know the folks that I do, because in an industry all about networking, I am very grateful to have the network that I do and have access to. I started taking my health a little bit more seriously in December and January when I moved back in with my parents. So I've been on a weight loss journey of sorts, and I've been working out almost consistently every day, and I've been trying to eat healthier, and I have new music coming out soon, and I've got projects that I'm working on. So in a year that sort of felt more like stalling and spinning my wheels, I feel like I've finally gained a little bit more traction, and I've started using my hands more for dramatic gestures. I don't know if you could tell with my hands what I've been doing.
What's the thought behind that?
There's probably actually like a reason, a psychological reason. Especially listening back to the last podcast episode that I did, and the podcast that I do with our friend David, the Too Bad We Didn't Get Into Cars podcast, which is also ending soon. It's, we both reached a point where the last almost 2 years we've been doing this countdown of because we ran out of new and recent albums and movies and games to talk about. And so we were like, why don't we just do our top 10? And then for video games, we picked top 15 for some reason, because I guess both of us were like, yeah, I guess we like more than just 10 games of all time. So we recently did an episode about my number one album, and he's going to do his number one album. And so we're like, there's not really anywhere we want to go after this. So we're going to kind of expedite the process of the next couple episodes and just be done with it. But anyway, so listening back to myself talking in so many different ways, podcasting, editing my own videos, even listening back to voice memos of songs that I write and I record myself singing, I notice, despite very intentionally wanting to be better at choosing my words and be better at not including filler words.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to talk with more intention. So part of that is being okay with empty space in a conversation. Part of that is letting my mind wander when I have something that I really want to think about and get right, instead of saying and nervously letting it come out as whatever. Because I feel like it's, for me, in my train of thought, I'm thinking I don't want to sound sloppy. Especially now that I'm meeting folks. I just did a private party this afternoon, and sometimes I know it's still low level in the grand scheme of things, but for some people, I'm the professional, where I'm coming in and they're paying hundreds of dollars to listen to me play at their, in this case, it was a birthday party for a 5-year-old. And so I have to hold myself up to a higher standard than say I'm going to an open mic or I'm playing a showcase that I'm not getting paid for. Not only am I getting paid a lot more for something like this, but also I'm being called in to provide a service and not just share my music with people that I know already, or share music with an audience that is expecting original music. In this case, I played 3 hours of cover songs, which was fun. And like most things that are, like most activities that become work that you get paid to do, it is a little tiring day after day. Especially, this is my third gig of the weekend. So especially, getting to this one in the outside and performing for a crowd that by the end tells me that they appreciate me. There's no really applause throughout the show. There was no, and the kids didn't give a shit, because why would they? They don't.
They're just playing.
Yeah, I literally saw them piled together around a tree, and I saw one kid in the tree, and I saw all the other kids piled in a circle around the base of the tree. And just for a second, my mind wandered, and I had to remember what it was like to be a kid and to be in that position where I was so bored, or at least my brain was so bored, that what it told me to do was just stand there. Let's watch another kid jump into the. If we were all hanging out in a group and Anthony started climbing a tree, if one of us was like, "Hey guys, what should we do?" And then Anthony started climbing a tree, I think our initial reaction wouldn't be to just watch him and admire and continue our conversation. I think one of us, probably David, would either yank him out of the tree and say, "Get the fuck.
Yeah.
We got to figure out where we're going." Anyway, this is derailed slightly, but I do like maintaining some semblance of intent when I'm talking, because even if my mind's going all over the place, because it is, and I talk a lot, if you haven't noticed already, I at least want to try to keep it concise when I'm in a setting that sort of expects that of me, or at least that's just my perception, because this is a very friendly space. Obviously, we're friends. And
I would argue we're like family.
Yeah, it's been that long,
because like we've said this before, and I'll say this till I'm blue in the face. Like, we are at a point. They always say that, like, if friendships, I don't know where I heard this. It was like an article, I think, that if friendships last longer than 7 years, there's a high probability that friendship is a lifelong friendship, just because within 7 years you would have gone through what, like, the worst of the friendship and the best. And so then whoever decides, if both parties decide to stick around despite that, and say, hey, the pros outweigh the cons, and this is a person that I see myself interacting with for longer than that, and both parties individually make up their minds about that, it'll happen in those 7 years. And so everyone will subconsciously have that thought in the back of their mind, where it's like, yeah, I don't see myself distancing from this person. And I feel like that's where we're at. And at times, and I know it's that because we are able to spend a long time not speaking.
Yeah.
And then picking back up
right
where things left off. And it's not weird.
Right. Yeah. We talked about it a little bit at my gig that you and Anthony came to about, because you were talking about our 10-year high school reunion, which is coming up. And it got me thinking about exactly that, about how there are people in my life. And I think about this, I wouldn't say more than most people, but at least I trick myself into thinking that my experience has shaped my worldview a little bit more, in that I've gone to so many schools, and by so many, I mean, I just moved high schools. So, so in my brain, when it comes to friend groups, for a long time, it was, okay, I have like my elementary school, like my Oak Forest friend group. I have my high school friend group, and I have my college friend group. And now that I'm 6 years removed from college, I recognize that the farther you get from forced interaction, like going to class and attending school events and being in the same room with folks that were scheduled to be in the same room with you at the same time, the farther you get away from that, the easier it is for distance to accumulate, and the amount of days that you don't see a person to just stack up. And eventually you stop thinking about that person naturally. And it's not a malicious thing.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously it's not a bad, like I'm not doing it to be an asshole when I haven't thought about.
It's not out of spite that you push that person out of your thoughts.
Exactly. And I feel that with certain people, you can have that accumulation of distance and still be reminded of them every once in a while. Like, I'll tell you what, every time, and it's so silly, but we used to have I don't know if you felt it on your end, but when we were growing up, I feel like you and I had such a rivalry between the two of us in so many different regards. But I feel like we were both inspired by, obviously, the shows that we watched and the media that we consumed. And as I've gotten older and the more anime I've watched with rivalries, the more I realize I think both of us kind of wanted that out of one another when we were growing up, because we didn't really have, at least I didn't really have a whole lot of people in my life that challenged me in those ways. And in the past, we've talked about bullying, and we've talked about the not so awesome parts of our friendship.
You can just say it, man. Like, it was an awful time to be my friend.
But I will say, I will add to that obviously there was a lot of good that came from being your friend. Mm-hmm. And I would be lying to myself if I only remembered the bad parts. And I feel like it goes back to what we were just talking about with our friendships that last more than 7 years. But with me and you, even if we don't see each other for a while, every time I go to the gym and I'm looking around and I'm on my little treadmill and whatnot, and I'm about to give up, I do like an incline walk. And every time I raise the incline, which is about like every 2 months, now I'm at a 10% incline. Every time I raise the incline and my legs are about to give out, I think about you, and I think about the kind of Goku Vegeta rivalry that I've sort of built up in my head, and it's not that way anymore. But every once in a while, I know when we're ribbing each other, I feel like something would come out of you, like, that's all you got, like, I feel like I hear, and so it's just, we've been friends for so long, and we've known each other for so long, and we've shared so many experiences that do end up at the end of the day bringing us so much closer together, because you're in my brain, you're in my thoughts without being in my life. And in that way, you are in my life still. So when I do see you, it's not it doesn't feel like that much time has passed because I'm still thinking about you, you know? And I believe wholeheartedly, firmly that the term soulmate, I feel like has, for a lot of people, strictly a romantic context, but I do believe that there are people in your lives that you can consider soulmates.
Absolutely.
That are
100%.
platonic.
100%.
And it's the folks in your life that have shaped you in such a way, positively, negatively, but that are still in your life because me and my dad, obviously I wouldn't consider us soulmates, because even though he's irreversibly affected me in a lot of ways, he's not in my life anymore. I've cut him out. But the people that have done the same or have had similar effect on my life that I still keep in touch with, they're the people that I'll tell anything to. And they're the ones that I share my secrets with and my feelings and my fears. And if that's not soulmate, if that's not what soulmates do with one another, I don't know what, I don't know how to finish this sentence.
I don't know what this is what you, yeah. No, I do think soulmate is another word for it. You can call them like twin flames, or you can call them like, there's different words for it. I personally think that certain people are enter your life to teach you certain lessons. And some of those people are only there to teach you lessons temporarily. And so at some point, whether it's you date somebody and this is my theory, there's no science at all behind this. This is just take this with a grain of salt, because this is just how I see the world. Right. And so I just think that certain people walk into your life to teach you certain lessons short term, and some of them stick around to teach you long term lessons. Yeah. And so I firmly believe that that's the same situation with you, because I learned a lot about myself through all of the negativity and the bullying that took place because of me. Yeah. There was a lot of things that I didn't know about myself until I started investigating why it is that I felt the need to do that. Right. And so that once I investigated that, it taught me about me. And then it taught me about what it is that I still need to figure out. And so that's where the long-term part comes in, is where you have, when you have come in and out of my life, as you have, I learned that, I wasn't as good of a friend as I wanted to be, as I thought I was, because I thought I was a better friend than I was, for sure.
Well, yeah. And
then in hindsight, when I look back at it, I'm like, I really wish I could get another shot at doing that again. And it just so happened that you didn't hold it permanently against me, where it wasn't like a thing where I'm like, hey, can I speak to you still? And you were like, there was never a time where you were like, no, I think I'm done with you, because you could have very well have gone that way. Yeah.
And I mean, I've done that with people. I feel like, side note, I don't want to project this idea that it's doing irreversible damage if you cut someone out of your life, even if, there are also folks by the same token that have had bad experiences with you before that you keep in your life. I feel like boundaries are so important, and I want to speak to your willingness to look inward and ask yourself questions because of my presence in your life, because I like to think that, because I know I've never been smart to the point where I like when you say, you helped me ask questions about myself and investigate. In my brain, I was listening to that and I was like, I didn't tell you to do that. I didn't say, but it's just, it's crazy that just someone doesn't like, you don't have to be smart in the traditional sense to impact someone's life and to make them wonder if what they're doing is wrong or how they're behaving is wrong. And I think I've done the same thing. There are people that come into my life that I don't know how to describe it. there are folks that make you want to be a better person, and folks that that make you want to be a better person. And I don't know. I know it's not all about me, and I don't want to pretend like that's why I pivoted the conversation this way, but I just want to say, I'm honored to be your friend, and I'm honored to be, your brother, and I'm honored to have gone through as much as we have together and be standing next to you on the other side of it all. And I'm honored to be on this podcast because this is, and I know I said that a little cheekily, but it's an extension of who you are. And it's very fulfilling to still be a part of your life in so many different facets, and to see the growth of the podcast and the growth of you within the confines of the podcast. And yeah, man, you're just, you're very warm. You're just a very warm person. And I never thought of you in that light, but it was when I talked to you and Anthony at that show that we were just at. Yeah, I had realized, like, oh yeah, Josh, he's I can't think of any other word besides, like, you've softened up, but like in a realistic, healthy way, where like things don't seem to bother you as much, or like trivial things don't seem to bother you as much, and you're more willing to let the unimportant shit go. And not that anything happened that day that would lead me to see that happen in real time, but I just got that sense from you that you're a lot more unbothered, and you prioritize the things in your life that you want to focus on that will help you better yourself. And I think that's amazing.
I'm sorry. I get hearing you say that just makes me emotional because, like when you said you didn't tell me to do any of these things, right?
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, when somebody the times where I really learned the lessons that I was supposed to learn was when somebody told me you hurt me.
Yeah.
Like, because that's the thing that you hope you never do.
Yeah.
I convinced myself that I wasn't doing what I was doing.
Yeah.
I had said that that I was, it's just in fun. We're just poking fun. That's what we do, right? Yeah. Like, that's just part of being kids, but it's not true. Good friends don't do that.
Yeah.
And so you didn't tell me, you didn't say, hey, like, hey, you should do this because you've upset me, or hey, you maybe you should try doing this a different way. Yeah. You didn't have to say that. By simply telling me that you hurt, that I had hurt you, that was enough for me to go, I would never want to do that again, because that's what makes you realize, like, how much, like, I care, like how much I care about you as a person, right?
Yeah.
I didn't expect to talk about this, to be honest.
When we did our little breakdown before the episode.
But see, this is what I love about these conversations, is they just go wherever they need to go.
Yeah.
And so that wasn't ever the thing that I ever wanted to do. And so to have done that, that's why I still, to this day, and I'll continue to apologize for it, regardless of how dumb it might be, that, like, we were kids or whatever, and it happens. It's a feeling I would never want to replicate. Yeah. So anyway, what were we talking about? Oh my God. It's, yeah.
You didn't expect to see us hug and make up in person, fuckers.
Jesus.
You've been rooting for our downfall since the beginning. I'm kidding.
No, it's dude, it's awesome that we get to experience this, because, like I mentioned to you, it could have gone very different. It could have been very much, I don't like, I don't want to talk to you anymore. And you would have been justified in that time. And so even now, right, because you wouldn't have known anything changed. And maybe if it didn't happen the way it did, maybe it wouldn't have, everything happens for a certain reason. And I think that's going back to what we were talking about, that like certain people teach you certain things, and some of them are long-term and some of them are short-term. I believe that that's one of the long-term lessons, is that you did stick around for a reason, and maybe you felt it because you mentioned that you felt previously with other people where it's like, it just doesn't feel long-term. This feels like this person isn't interested in being here, or maybe I'm not interested in what's going on around me.
Right.
And for some reason you were like, I'm going to give this a shot, or I'll just see what happens.
Yeah, I definitely think there's some merit to the idea that I feel like lessons can be learned from people, months, years after the fact. And with me and you, when I referred to hurting people and that leading, because I feel like that happens to everybody. It's a universal. It's unless you're literally a psychopath and you don't believe that your actions have consequences and hurt people.
That's a possibility.
But I feel like folks need to reach a certain level of, I don't want to say main character energy, but I guess in that vein, for a really long time, I didn't feel like in our friend group, I didn't have a lot of confidence. And to that end, it wasn't until after I had found things that I was passionate about in high school, and I'd found a more solid sense of self in high school, that it was only after that where I was able to, I guess, feel confident enough to hurt people. And then go through that journey of discovery and that reaching of the forked road where I could choose to accept that I fucked up and I hurt somebody, or ignore that I hurt someone, pretend like it didn't happen, gaslight them into thinking, no, this is, or gaslight myself and say like, no, it wasn't, I'm not at fault here, because that's psychopath behavior. And I don't know if I'm using psychopath correctly, but I'm trying to use the correct.
No, I think, and I know because I've done exactly that, because there's a certain level of vulnerability that is required to say, I did something that hurt somebody.
Yeah.
And because shame is something that I think I personally struggled with, and I'm sure most people do, is the feeling of like, does this mean I'm a bad person if I hurt somebody? And that's like your inner child. From my experience, is like the inner child is what is afraid to say, hey, like, if I did this wrong, am I a bad person? And that's the part that we struggle with, I think, is when you hurt someone, first you have to admit that you did something to them that hurt them, regardless of whether or not you intended, or regardless of what it is that you saw happening. When somebody says you hurt them, it doesn't mean that you're a bad human.
Right.
And that's the part that like is disconnected.
Right. Well, because that's interpretive, and the person telling you that they hurt you, that's a fact. And because I like to think, there's so many metaphors about internal, like emotional injuries versus physical injuries. And with physical injuries, obviously, if you chop someone's arm off and they came up to you and they're like, bro, what the fuck? And you couldn't just say like, I didn't do it. Yeah. Because the proof is right there. But with emotional hurt and emotional wounds, you can't see it. The same way that, when you're in love or when you're sad, you can't, like, that's a feeling. So when it comes to verifying a mental wound, it can only come from the person who's feeling that emotion, who's experiencing the wound itself. And so for someone to deny the existence of that pain, especially if they're the one that caused it, that's fucked up. But it goes back to your inner child comment, because I feel like all of us grow up with this different idea of punishment and being a bad person and being called a bad kid or doing something bad. And for a long time, I feel like through this, in this fucked up act of self-preservation, we try to keep a spotless record of how long can we grow up without hurting somebody.
Yeah.
And when we hurt somebody, how long can we go denying it before someone catches us, you know? And for some people, it becomes, like I said, we all hit that fork in the road where we have a choice of either denying that we hurt somebody and accepting that we fucked up and accepting our mistakes. And I think there's also this idea that once we accept that being a bad person would be the opposite of telling yourself you're a bad, like, it's like when someone, you know, I have it happen in my life every once in a while where someone will say, I'm sorry, I've been a bad friend and I haven't reached out to you and I haven't talked to you. And I always try to tell that person, no, you're having the self-awareness to know that, to having the self-awareness to realize that you are potentially hurting my feelings and getting in front of it and apologizing for being a bad friend. I feel like that makes you a better friend than had you just ignored it and not addressed it. And so it kind of feels silly to try to get out ahead of someone being upset at you. But like, that's how we keep ourselves in check, is apologizing before something happens. And I don't know. I mean, I think that just, I like to believe that all my friends are good people, and that includes you. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You're a good person.
Thank you.
And, you know, and I feel like you definitely, not going to the same high school, it made it seem like we had the same sort of emotional revelations at the same time. But in truth, it took me way longer to acknowledge that because when we knew each other in middle school, when we were first friends, you had the kind of confidence to, I mean, at the time, it was the confidence to do whatever you wanted, even if that included hurting me or being mean to me. And it was the kind of confidence that I never thought I would have. And I think that's part of the reason why I never even thought that, you know, I would ever have to apologize for anything. But it was so far in the back of my mind that even the idea of like, oh, I don't have to apologize for that wasn't even, you know, I never even thought like, this is what I can get away with. It was just, oh, I'm on the other end of this always, all the time. So getting to high school and college and beyond that, that's where I fucked up. And that's where I had to ask myself if I was doing things wrong. And I feel like because of that, it sort of stunted my growth and my maturity a little bit, so that in college, you know, when I would date people, I made a lot of mistakes that people my age had made in high school when they were dating. And at a time where I thought, oh, if I keep chasing after the same girl for 3 years, she's going to like me eventually. You know, that's not very mature. And I hadn't fucked up enough in my life and made enough mistakes and hurt enough people to realize that that wasn't mature. I'm rambling, but I just want to say that I respect you so much, and I respect your journey of bettering yourself, and I respect your realizations really early, and I respect your apologies too. But more than anything, yeah, I am in the exact same spot that I was when I was at that age, in the sense that I still look at you and I see someone that I can model myself after. And yeah, and it's just, you know, you're a rock in my life. You're a presence in my life that you always have been, that I couldn't imagine my life without. And you know,
I really appreciate that. I genuinely, I'm honored that you would feel that way about me. And to your point that you were making about that when you were, one of the things you learned was that you hadn't gone to that point where you had to kind of check yourself in that way. And you mentioned that when you came home earlier, you mentioned that coming home was like an ego check.
Yeah.
What brought you to that decision?
So I feel like the reason why it was an ego check was precisely because it wasn't entirely my decision. And it's hard to admit sometimes that my life circumstances aren't in my control, because everyone wants to feel like they have control.
Sure.
Especially me. I'm the kind of guy who I appreciate a good itinerary.
Yeah.
I appreciate getting to know what I'm doing in my life, and when I have no direction, or when I wake up and I have nothing to do for the day and I sit around, I feel like actual garbage, like an actual piece of garbage that you see on the side of the road and choose to ignore instead of put in the garbage can. The metaphor is getting away from me, but
something to that effect.
Something to that effect. So coming home after living on my own for so long, almost a full school cycle, and after having told myself I'm never moving back home again, because this first move it's a big step forward for me. Mm-hmm. When in actuality, it was, I moved out the first chance that I got because I didn't want to live at home anymore. And that was the immaturity. And part of getting over that was moving back home. And instead of trying to keep up this facade of adulthood because I'm not living with my parents,
right,
I accepted, not only is the housing market fucked, especially for single people, if you were to try to find a 1-bedroom, whatever. But also, I feel like there's absolutely no shame in moving back in with my parents, especially considering that I have the kind of relationship with my parents where I am able to do that.
Right.
And I have to acknowledge that privilege too, where some people, they get kicked out of their houses when they're like 16, 17, and they don't get to move back in with their parents if they can't support themselves out in the real world. So, you know, I would get on dating apps and I would text girls and I'd be like, I would never actually bring up that I still lived at home. But that was always something that I was afraid of doing. And eventually I learned that the solution is just to get off dating apps. They fucking suck. They're the worst. They're really awful. And I cannot speak to this subject enough because I don't know what it is, man. I don't know if it's because I'm a hopeless romantic or because I don't have abs and I can't just post that to my my Tinder profile. But there's just something about having to smush the getting to know you conversation into it. I always get so anxious when I'm waiting for someone on a dating app to reply. When I'm waiting for a girl to message me back, there's so much pressure to keep the conversation exciting because you don't want them to ghost you.
Yeah.
So I will spend all day looking at my phone. Like every 5 minutes, I'll check my phone to see if I missed a vibration of someone sending me a message. And so I've deleted them. I'm off. Sorry, everyone watching this that's hoping to find me on Hinge. You're never going to find me on Hinge.
I mean,
and I'm sure my experience isn't indicative of everyone's experience, but
I feel like I've heard that that's the general consensus, is just that it's become very surface level, and it's almost just because with how easy it is to like just swipe and match with people, it becomes very mundane, and it loses its like specialness.
Yeah,
I guess is.
Yeah, because like getting to know someone and getting to know them with the intention of like making out with them later, it's something that I personally, I used to live by the my code was I'd rather be cute than hot, which is to say that I'd rather have a girl want to get to know me without thinking of me sexually in any way. I'd like to get her, I'd like us to get to a point where we're more interested in getting to know about each other. Mm-hmm. And in doing so, we become hot to one another because there's an added layer of sex appeal that I feel like you only learn when you get to know someone really well. Someone that you're attracted to right off the bat. There could be actual compatibility there, but you're not going to know the same way as getting to know someone first. And then all of a sudden one day they like flip their hair a certain way and your heart beats a couple of times extra too many times in a second. And you're like, oh, fuck. Oh, shit. I have to go home early, I think. That nothing beats that shit, dude. Nothing beats that shit. So, remember when I said before the episode that I wanted to talk about weight loss?
Yeah.
We're 55 minutes in.
Well, technically.
And all we've done is hug each other. And
hey,
I mean, it's important.
I don't. All we did was
that's all we have.
It was talk about you.
We're gonna talk about you and your fucking dog.
You and your feelings,
dude. I got another dog.
Oh, what?
Yeah, we got another dog. Like
what's
a week
his name?
Oliver.
Okay, I accept that name.
Well, I wanted to call him Almond because he is an Australian Shepherd and Border Collie mix.
Yeah.
So he's got brown and white and black in his fur. And so I was like, he kind of looks like an Almond Joy. And so I want to call him Almond. And every member of my family was like, fuck you. That's awful. And so I was like, well, I was going to call him Ollie if his name was Almond for short. So they put Oliver into a hat. And according to my mom, which I was not there to see because I was driving back home from a gig. But according to her, they put a bunch of names into a hat or into her hand. And she opened it up and he grabbed a piece of paper. He grabbed it with his mouth and she pulled it out of his mouth. And the name on it was Oliver. So he picked his own name. He liked Ollie.
I feel like that's
so
special.
much. It's so special. And that also means that the only two dogs that we've ever had, I named both of them. So
also that.
Fuck you guys. They're not watching this. They're never going to watch this. At least I hope not. Oh, I'm getting a phone call. Hold on. Hey, Mom. You heard me say what on the podcast?
I thought you were completely serious.
That's my high school acting experience, baby.
That's also true.
No, it's not.
I forgot. No, I forgot you did that. I completely forgot you were.
I was a sports kid freshman year of high school, and then I pivoted almost 180 degrees.
And then decided you weren't going to do that no more.
Yeah, but what's cool is there were sports people that came to see me in the plays. Not because I was also in sports, but because that was just the environment that we had at the school. So it like almost incentivized me trying more artsy things because I knew I wouldn't be judged by the cool kids if I was a theater kid. Because they all came to see the shows.
Sure.
So it was kind of a magical moment for me when I realized, oh, I could have as much social worth, which I recognize as a problematic phrase now, but I could have as much social worth as the cool kids in middle school had by doing the things that I'm good at that aren't sports. So that was wild, but yeah, I did theater in high school.
So, well, sorry, I'm pausing this thing because it's about to end itself. not like that. It's about to end. And I don't know what else is gonna skip to. Can we not do that? Hey. Okay. So then I wanted to ask about you had mentioned, and I hope this isn't, if you don't want to talk about it, you don't have to. Sure. I know we talked about that you were okay with it, but
yeah.
Okay, so you move back home, and is that when your grandfather gets sick?
Well, so he was diagnosed with COPD and emphysema years ago. Mm-hmm. So when we were all still going to school together, I'm pretty sure it was in middle school, he got diagnosed with both of those And so his lungs were fucked for a really long time.
I remember that part. Yeah.
Yeah. He ended up living on an oxygen tank or living off an oxygen tank for many years. He didn't leave the house very often. He sat on his, in the exact same spot on the couch every day. He slept on the same couch every night. And so when he finally passed, it wasn't a surprise.
Yeah.
It was obviously very sad, and a lot of our family came from all over the country to come mourn his loss, and it really hurt my mom a lot because between her two parents, she was way closer to my grandpa than she is my grandma.
Right.
So yeah, that was almost immediately after. Like, he was in and out of surgeries by the time I moved back in, which was towards the beginning of December.
Mm.
And so about 2 weeks later, he was admitted to the ER because I forget exactly what happened. He might have been complaining about chest pains, or it was an urgent enough thing. So he was in the hospital for 3, 4, 5 days. We got to FaceTime him on Christmas, I believe, in the morning when we were opening gifts. And then the next day, I was sitting at home alone on the couch, and everyone else was gone. I think my sister was at work. My stepdad was out. And my mom was at the hospital with my grandpa. And then she calls me, and I'm playing Pokemon. I remember exactly. I was playing Pokemon Scarlet or Violet on my Switch. Mm. And she calls me. And she's like, "Nicholas," and I'm like, "Uh-oh." Mm. And she says, "Are you sitting down?" I don't even know if she asked that. I am probably making shit up, but yeah. And so, my heart definitely dropped, but less, I think, because he was gone. I don't think my brain caught up in time, but it was hearing my mom's voice and like the hurt in her voice that what came through so apparent out of the phone speakers that like really got me. And then maybe 5 minutes after I hang up with her, I had the realization that, oh shit, okay, so the next 2 weeks of my life are pretty much, it's going to be this. Mm. Like this, that's what I always forget about death, is it, especially like a close family death, it becomes your life in almost like a symbolic way, because maybe there is stuff unfinished in their lives that you as the people what's the phrase I'm looking for? To live on through them, or they live on through you. Mm. As those responsible, it's your duty to kind of help, foster their journey to the other side, whatever you believe in. If you believe there's a heaven and hell or whatever, all I know is that they're not in this spot anymore. And so so that was a whole thing. And I've known for a couple of years now that I don't know how. I've known that I don't know.
Yeah.
I've known that death affects me differently than other people, in that I don't think I've ever cried at a funeral. Mm. And as a kid, that makes sense, because kids don't have the cognitive ability to grasp the concept of death. Mm-hmm. But there was a death in my family a couple of years ago. I was in college, and I remember calling my girlfriend at the time, and I walked out, and she was like, "How is everything?" And I didn't know how to tell her, but I said, I haven't cried yet. Mm. And I sounded like an asshole. I don't think she perceived it that way, but when I think back on it, I'm like, man, what a fucking asshole response to how's the funeral going. And then it wasn't until my grandpa passed, and I also didn't cry at the funeral, for me to realize I don't know when I became emotionally stunted in this way, but and I don't even know if stunted is the right word, but I've tried to rationalize with myself plenty of times since my grandpa's passing as to why even someone who I grew up with, decades of knowing, why even after he's gone, I still haven't really cried about it. Because I'm a big baby. I cry about everything. Mm-hmm. I cry about I cry about movies. I cried about Inside Out 2 most recently. Mm-hmm. I went to go see the guy who did the Spirited Away theme song and all of the music for the Hayao Miyazaki movies. I saw him perform and I cried and I got emotional. And I think the way I've justified it, and I definitely need therapy. I could definitely benefit from therapy, I should say. But the way I've rationalized it is I feel like I'm so in touch with my emotions that I'm able to recognize when something is manufactured to elicit a response from me, i.e. a movie or a soundtrack or art. But when something happens in my life that I am either prepared for or have thought through a lot, or I've just emotionally not really checked out, but I don't know, when it comes to things in my life that make me sad, like loss, I feel like I'm able to talk through my feelings, and that helps me not be so negatively affected by them, but instead I'm able to more focus on what his life meant and what it meant to me specifically. And the only time that I got close to crying at his funeral was when I went up to read something that I had written, which again goes back to, I wrote that out. It's almost like reading a script, right? Like it was a post that I had made on Facebook that my mom was like, "You want to read that about your grandpa?" And that elicited a response from me because that's why I wrote it. Mm-hmm. I wrote it with intention, and even reading that out loud, it elicited a fucking response. So I'm like, I can't cry when I look at his, when I look into the casket and I see him and I realize he's never going to breathe again. But he's breathing better now. I like to think. Yeah, dude, I don't know. I've been rambling, and
I have a theory. Sorry to cut you off.
That's okay. No, cut me off. I need to be stopped.
I have a theory, and this is the only reason why I have this theory is because my therapist told me this, and I did this. And so like I recognize and I think I know what's happening.
Okay.
Could be wrong. Might not feel right for you. But I think that when things are really close to you and are very difficult, and I did this, is when I was scared to feel the emotion or feel the pain, I would logic my way through it. So I would just, because when you logic your way through things, you shut emotion off, right? Yeah. Because if I can explain it away, I don't have to feel it.
That's true.
So I'm not saying this is what's happening. I'm just saying that.
But it could be.
I'm just saying that it's a possibility that it might just be the case that because those things like going to the movies and seeing something that's like, it's not close to you. Yeah. It's not as scary to be vulnerable.
Right.
But when it's something that it's like your grandfather, who I know you were close to.
Yeah.
I remember that specifically. That when that happens, like the best way to deal with that kind of thing for you at the moment is to logic your way through it. Yeah. Because if you can explain away him being gone, you don't have to feel his absence.
Yeah.
That's what I realized I was doing. And I would shut off emotions. My therapist would catch me. So she said that I would hit play when I would talk about my past, like about trauma. She said that I would like hit play like I was reading a book or I was like a video, and it was just showing the events of my life. And I was kind of standing like I was talking about it like a narrator, like an outsider, because it's easier to separate myself than to be that kid, right? So when I tell the story, I'm telling it from an outsider's perspective, even though
it's you,
it's me.
Yeah.
And so she would stop me because she told me that I was so good at shutting emotion off. She said that it would start to come up. She'd be like, there'd be certain parts where that kid, like you would check into that kid, like that kid's perspective, and then you'd shut it off. Because like, here's what I would do. Ready? This is what I would do. Yeah. I would just go, let's say I'm talking about, like, for example, with the domestic violence that happened when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I would get to that part and I'd be like, yeah, and all I could hear was, the banging and the sounds of, what sounded like somebody hitting somebody else. I would, in that moment, like I would kind of pause, and then like, that's the emotion. And I'd be like, and anyway, and then that's shutting it off.
Right.
And so she'd stop me. She'd be like, she'd tell me to pause and be like, go back to that. And we'd go back. And then it's like, do you understand what's happening? And I would be like, what are you talking about?
Right.
And so once I recognize it, and it's like, what's the feeling when you go to that part, you tell that part, do you feel anything like in your chest, in your throat, in your stomach? And we'd go through the feelings. Right. And so then it'd be like, yeah, kind of right here. And like sit with that for a minute. And then when that gets taken away from you, that your coping mechanism, because that's a coping mechanism to intellectualize problems. Right. It's a coping mechanism. So when that gets taken away from you, only thing you can do, that's your only defense for avoiding pain. Yeah. Once that's removed from you, the floodgates open. And that's what it took for me. So when you that's why now I just, whenever I talk about anything, I just start crying because that has been removed. Yeah. Is that self-protection is gone, because I've learned that it's better to feel the actual emotion than to stop it and then not allow myself to heal. Yeah. Does that make sense kind of?
Yeah. And
do you think that's anything that relates to you?
Yeah, I love that first of all, I appreciate you opening up to me about that. And I respect your emotions, and your trauma is valid and your feelings are valid. And I love you. Yeah. But I love also how you got to the end of your explanation, and I almost felt like I was standing in the aisle of like an IKEA or like a store, and someone was like selling me on this this piece of furniture or whatever. And then we get to the end. They're like, so what do you think? Do you think that you would use that in your home? Or do you think you would?
And then you go, no.
And I walk away. I'm like, I came here for the meatballs.
Yeah, no, actually, I have nothing. I care very little about what you have to say.
Now I asked where the bathroom was.
Yeah.
So, and then you took me to the in-store toilets.
Right, correct.
And you tried to
as
sell
one does.
Me. Yeah. Right. I think there's a lot of validity to that as it applies to my own life. And you know what I've said? I've said that I experience my real world trauma through art, and that's how I process it. Because I feel like when I'm watching a movie or when I'm listening to something that is designed to elicit an emotion, I'm so willing to let it, because I'm so art driven, that I'm willing to let go of control and just let the art do what it has to do, or what it's designed to do. And because I'm not thinking intellectually about my feelings as it pertains to what art does to move me, I am also not intellectually thinking about my traumas and the things that have hurt me in my life. And I justify it as, like, when I listen to, for example, I have a couple of songs that always make me cry. Almost every single one of them instrumental. And partially because they pertain to different eras of my life. But sometimes I'll listen to the menu music from Kingdom Hearts 2 specifically, the theme Dearly Beloved. And every time I do, I cry like really hard. And I don't know if it's because I miss being a kid again or if I'm reopening what it felt. Because I don't think I'm thinking about the bad times or the good times deliberately. And I think that's where the removal of the logical brain comes into play, is because I think my heart's just letting me feel whatever it needs to feel. And my brain's not really paying attention because the song or whatever is holding the little hypnotizing medallion in front of my face.
Yeah.
And so like my brain is totally distracted. And so my heart takes control and it's like, fuck, I've been waiting forever to do this. Yeah, or at least that's my way of externalizing this in this conversation specifically, which it could be true. It could not be true. I could just have some unresolved trauma that I haven't checked that I need to talk through with a professional.
Sure. And again, it's not something you have to solidify and say, this is 100% how it works. Cause I'm still figuring things out, and I could next year when we talk again, I'm assuming on this podcast is that I'll say, hey, actually I learned that it wasn't this, or it was this, or it was a little bit of this and a little bit of that.
Yeah.
And like I said, you don't know what you don't know. And that was the case for me, where it was like, if somebody would have asked me what I just asked you, that's why I just thought about it. I'm like, but until you do the work, like, could you really know?
Right.
That's what it is. That's why when I asked you that question, I was like, do you relate to that? Cause like I didn't when I was told.
Yeah.
Cause when I was told that, I was like, nah, what are you talking about?
Well, right. Do you think that has something to do with the self-criticism and the willingness to not, when it comes to, it's a different mindset when you're forcing yourself to reopen a wound that you caused to someone else. Mm-hmm. But do you think the same logic sort of applies, or lack of logic, I suppose, when you're investigating internal wounds too? Mm-hmm. Is there sort of an accountability that I'm denying because by refusing to check those emotions, I'm retaining those wounds, right? So like, it's sort of like the murderer has amnesia and figures out by the end of the movie that he was the murderer the whole time, and he just put up a mental wall and adopted a different personality because the guilt of his actions were too much to handle, and so his brain was like, actually, you're a different person now. It's like, do you think there's some connectivity there?
Well, I do think that shame is feeling shame and being able to tap into that vulnerability that I mentioned to you of like, for example, the reason why, I think it'll make more sense if I just explain this. The reason why they came together when I started doing therapy about like my stuff and tapping into what that kid was going through. I also, I'm going to say it like it's an Xbox achievement. Like you'll unlock. When I thought about it, I was like, there's really no better way for me to explain this.
I mean, it's really how the kid must have thought about
exactly,
it too,
right?
Yeah.
There you go.
It's like
that's how we'll justify it.
That's what would have said in middle school.
So it was kind of like, I also, by tapping into that kid's feelings and those memories, I also was able to tap into the ability to feel shame.
Yeah.
And to not to feel it, but to be able to figure out why, and then be like, okay, what is this? What part of this is mine, and what part of this isn't? And they came together because if you figure out where, and then maybe this isn't the case for everybody. For me, they came together because when I did the work about healing my trauma and addressing what that kid was feeling, I figured out what was mine and what wasn't. And that applies to when you feel guilty about you hurting somebody, right? There are things that are yours and there are things that aren't. And so what is mine? And when you go, okay, what can I take account? What did I do that I could have done better? What could I have contributed to make this a better situation? Or what did I contribute to make this worse than it needed to be? And once you're able to tap into that, there's those two just kind of come hand in hand. Does that make any sense? I feel like I did a terrible job explaining.
No, I was gonna add, if it helps to illustrate the metaphor, that I feel like it's like two sides of the same coin. Mm-hmm. It's like you still get the coin. Like this penny is gonna fucking hurt, right? Mm-hmm. But there's two sides of it. There's or maybe I shouldn't use the penny metaphor, but like with all hurt, there's always someone on one end and someone on the other. And in certain cases, even if you are a part of the coin, you don't have to carry the other half of it with you. And it's acknowledging that in situations where you've been hurt or you've hurt someone else, that there's always a flip side. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I guess like relating it back to my life a little bit, you know, I brought up my dad earlier. Yeah. He's a real piece of shit. He's a real shitbag. Physical, verbal abuse with my mom and my bonus mom, who he had met after, and threatening to, it was my little sister Gabby's 3rd birthday. Mm-hmm. And I'd come over after not seeing him for a very long time, very deliberately not seeing him because I was an adult and I didn't want to deal with his bullshit. But finally, there was a day where he was actually like tolerable. And I thought, okay, you know what? Of my own volition, I'm going to go over, because he was living with my bonus mom at the time, who I say bonus mom instead of stepmom because they never married, but like she might as well be my stepmom. But bonus mom is cuter. And so I went over to her house, and I feel like as soon as he saw the door was open, like I opened the door back up for him, he immediately went back to like, so why haven't you been calling me? Why haven't you been talking to me? And I, you know, made up some like, well, you know, because I've been really busy or whatever. And then he like grabs my arm and he starts to like apply pressure, and he like grits his teeth. It's the shit that he did when I was a kid and I was little. And I told him, you know, I could leave if you want me to. I can just go. And he said, you're not going to leave until I don't know how he phrased it, but he was like, until I put you out on the sidewalk, and essentially threatening me with violence. And that's when everyone in the room started screaming at him. I maintained my composure and I walked out, and I have not spoken to him since. And so like there's hurt in that scenario, right? Yeah. Physical hurt, emotional hurt. I don't know what he was feeling in order to provoke that response out of him, but I don't have to carry that shit. Like, I acknowledge I was in a situation where there was hurt involved, but I'm not going to ask myself, did I say something that I should be held responsible for that caused that? And like, no, man,
that's not yours.
That's not yours. Mm-hmm. And I feel like when I bury situations like that and I don't talk about them, you just conflate the hurt on both sides and you carry it with you.
Yes.
And the more times that you deny investigation, when you deny looking into a situation like that and just ignore it, and you're like, nah, it's whatever, it's behind me. It's like, well, is it really? Or is it just like, because it could be behind you and you're walking away from it, but it could also be behind you in the big ass burlap sack that you're carrying with you the whole time. And it's like, one of those puts a lot more strain on you. So you have to acknowledge by investing, you get what I mean.
I do want to wrap up within like the next 5 minutes or so. There's so much that I want to ask you. So much
to talk about.
Okay. So here's one thing I did. I don't think I told you this. And this is just my experience again.
Yeah.
This can be very different from what you experience. So I don't want this to be like this is what you're going through.
Right.
Because I don't have a right to speak on that. But for me, I forgave my dad. I went to California in June. And I randomly realized that, I was always told in therapy that forgiveness isn't for the other person.
Yeah.
It's for you. And I was like, I don't get what that means. Like, truly, like, what do you mean? But like, by forgiving somebody, you need that person there to forgive. So what do you mean? It has to be to some extent for them.
Yeah.
And I didn't really understand exactly what that meant until I went over there. And I realized that what's different here isn't my dad. It's me. My response to what he does is different. Yeah. And so the expectation for me wasn't that my dad I wasn't going in there with expectation that my dad that he had changed. In fact, I was expecting him to be exactly the same as I remembered. Right. And he was. I went over there, and what's changed is that you have boundaries now. Yeah. If your dad, for example, what are you not willing to tolerate? Like you said, I'm willing to leave here if you're going to put your hands on me. Yeah. Right? And that's your boundary. You draw that line, and you stay at that line, right. No matter what. Yeah. And so that's what loving yourself means, is that I will not allow A, B, and C, whether you're my mom or my dad. Yeah. Plain and simple. So when I went over there, I came with a line. Mm-hmm. I went over there and I said, I did not listen to you when I was a kid because I couldn't handle it. I couldn't handle hearing your side of things. So what you say I will not have to carry. And so now I can hear you. So I went over there and I asked my dad for his perspective on what had happened in my parents' divorce. And originally that wasn't going to be the case. Originally I went there and I was like, you know what? I just want to go and I want to just tell him that I forgive him and I expect nothing else. Sure. I don't expect anything to evolve from it. I expect, if nothing else, just for me to go over there and then to tell him that despite all of what he did and all of the things that hurt me that he did, that at the end of the day, he's a human being. And I think the most powerful thing for me was to have humanized him, to not be a monster anymore. Yeah. And once I did that, I could speak to him like a human, and I did not go over there with my guard up because there's nothing he can do to hurt me anymore. Right. So like that is a superpower that I didn't have before, where it was hard for me because it was threatening, because I felt like I had to hold what he said, and not true. And it made the experience way more pleasant than if I would have went there with that mentality of like, I hope he doesn't say this. I hope he doesn't do this. Him holding power over you. I hope he doesn't. Oh, because if this is going to really bother me, I went there with the idea of like, this is my line, and I can simply, if it gets to a point where I'm not comfortable or I do not want to, I'm out. Yeah, and that's it. And then it'll just be that. But fortunately, I was able to hear him and go, I think this might be true. I don't think this is true, and so I don't believe that part. But I don't need to tell you that. I don't care.
Right, like I'm not trying to prove something to you by being here.
I don't care whether you see it that way or you don't. Yeah, I don't believe that, and so that part I just toss that away. But you might be right about this thing, and so what is this? What happened here? And so that's what it was when I talked to my dad. It was like, and he himself did tell me like, just because my dad has this fear, I would say, of like silence. My dad would just say the same things over and over again, and I used to think as a kid that it was malicious. Yeah. And I found out that he literally just is, no matter what, is unable to handle silence. So like if we stop talking for a while, he'll just like, remember this thing that he told me like yesterday? Yeah. Remember this thing that happened and blah, 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 blah. And I used to think it was like, oh, it's like manipulation, because that's what I heard my mom say. It's like, oh, he's trying to manipulate me. And that was scary. Right. And now that I'm an adult and I've done healing and I understand why things happen, I can see things objectively. I realized my dad just hates silence. Like he can't stand it.
That's a very human thing.
Yeah, like he cannot stand silence. He will do anything in his power to fill silence with anything. Yeah. Anything and it's just the same stories over and over again. My dad tells me he calls me every Sunday now. He tells me the same stories over and over again. That call isn't for him. That call's for me. I didn't have my dad. And so when he calls me now every Sunday, and I set the line of, hey, I'm at work from this day to this day. Saturdays I'm busy, but Sunday I can make some time for you. Yeah. Please call me on Sunday. And he's like, okay, I'll call you on Sunday. And so every Sunday he calls me, and I'm very fortunate in that that's how it happened. Yeah. Could have very well been different. It could have very well been like he crosses a line for me and I have to walk out. That didn't happen, but it could be a thing of like, for example, when you mentioned your dad putting his hands on you, that's a no-no. Like, that line is like, clear in the sand.
In any case.
Yeah. And so like in your scenario, it might be different, right?
Yeah.
Healing might look different for you, and it might not include your dad.
Yeah.
But like physically, but who knows what that looks like? But that's what it was for me. He stopped being a monster, and once he became a human, I realized I'm a lot like him in some ways, right? Like I do things like that sometimes. I also react this way.
Yeah.
And when I saw him that way, it stopped being scary.
Yeah.
So,
well, and I think it's truly amazing, and I'm very grateful that he, it sounds like, was willing to meet you halfway, and he acknowledged your boundaries, even if it wasn't a physical him telling you, hey, I'm acknowledging your boundary, right? Because some people just don't have the vocabulary.
Yeah.
You know, and it's going back to what you had mentioned before, where sometimes people can teach you lessons without explicitly inciting the lesson. And in this case, you learned a lot about yourself, and he was states away on the other side of the country. And him being willing to meet you where he met you, I don't want to assume anything. I don't want to make an ass out of you and me. But I think without knowing the vocabulary, without having the same extensive background of therapy and the hindsight that you've been given and you've allowed yourself by being introspective about your past, I think that was an invitation for him. And by you reshaping your framework and your worldview, I feel like there's a magical thing between people where you understand the unsaid. And I like to believe that my dad could be redeemed as far as what he's done to my family and what he's continuing to do to my family. But I don't think I'm ready.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm ready. And that's why I decided to cut him out of my life, because he crossed too far over my boundary.
Absolutely.
I believe. And from what I hear, he's pulling the same shit with my little sister. And I don't know if it's gotten physical at all. I really hope not.
Right.
I also don't think her mom, my bonus mom, I don't think she would let him to continue seeing her if that were the case. But yeah, it's a lot to unpack, and I feel like we've unpacked a lot today.
Oh boy, did we?
I can't tell you how much it means to. I know the first time I came on the podcast, I don't know if we ever really got this far.
I've also, like I said, this has kept me accountable. And so like my progress has also shifted. Yeah. And so like in the beginning I didn't know how to start these conversations,
but you wanted to.
I wanted to.
And that's the important part. And I appreciate that first step, because the same way you say that when you would apologize before, and when you would try to open a dialogue, I want to apologize now if it feels like I ever cut you off by saying, you don't have to apologize. Because, I don't know if you thought about it this way, but you apologizing to me, it wasn't for me. I mean, in some way it could have been, but that's up to me. That's up to me to accept your
absolutely
invitation. So by denying you that, you respected that, knowing that, you wanted to apologize and seeing that I wasn't allowing you to, and I just didn't realize it at the time. And so I feel like today was really important, because I can't speak to whether or not I've emotionally matured in the last year that we've spoken, but I honestly, I feel like we're way closer now.
I believe so than
Yeah.
ever. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think that's ever. I don't think either of us have the power to take that away from the other at this point.
We're stuck, man. I'm sorry. I'm just kidding. I don't want to phrase it that way.
Side note, I recently shaved my armpits.
Oh?
Yeah, I've been doing more like body hair maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple of weeks ago I was like, fuck it. No chest hair, no
Clean.
belly button. Yeah, completely clean.
Okay.
And I will say it affected different parts of my body differently.
Mm-hmm.
For one thing, I only noticed in my armpits, very itchy, very uncomfortable.
Oh, I'm sure.
When you
Stubble.
shave them. Yeah. However, I smelled way better more consistently throughout the day.
Okay.
Because apparently body hair, because it stores so much sweat and bacteria and whatever.
Oil as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it tends to get stinkier even after you put deodorant on.
Sure.
But I didn't notice this until my hair started growing back, and I would put on deodorant and I would get stinkier way quicker, way earlier in the day. And that's why I thought, all right, maybe chest hair can stay. Maybe armpit hair has to go again.
Okay.
Maybe that has to be a regular thing, because I hate being stinky.
Who doesn't?
Dude, I fucking hate being stinky so much. I love
it's the worst when you notice it yourself. Like
oh yeah,
was that
like
me?
First thing in the morning, I put on a tank top and I'm like, I'm gonna go to the gym, and then I like reach over and I was like, no, not yet.
Yep.
Not yet. I gotta fix that. So, I will maintain better hygiene if we are stuck together.
All right.
So you heard it here first, folks.
You heard it here first. Nick, I'm really grateful to have you as a friend. I really appreciate your presence in my life, and I really hope that we can continue this for another decade or two.
Yeah, keeping up with each other, keeping up with the Lopez's and Scarpinatos.
Absolutely, man. Thank you so much. We'll have you on again sometime.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you, sir.
Hey, man,